Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see you all. Thank you for coming. So today we're going to talk about anxiety and depression, but I hope I don't depress you or make you anxious at the end of this talk. So we're going to try to make it a little more interactive, a little more engaging. So I do want to encourage you to just jump in and, give your thoughts, your suggestions, or comments you might have, or questions you might have as we go along. And before we get started, I do want to get a sense of who's here. I see some familiar faces. Thank you for coming. But also get a sense of, the audience. So how many providers do we have in the room? Meaning you work in the field and you work with individuals who suffer brain injury. Yeah. Oh, okay. Wonderful. What about family members or caregivers of someone with brain injury? Very nice. Very nice. And how about survivors of brain injury? Oh, wonderful. So we have a very diverse group, actually. It's about split, like 3 ways. So that's really wonderful. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And let's see here. I'm a little tech challenged, so something may go wrong. Just be warned. I'm sorry? Is this a new job for me, the managing the tech stuff? Probably. I wouldn't hire me though, so we're gonna, I hope we can talk a little bit about what mental health is, what depression, anxiety may look like. Also get a sense of what may cause mental illness, as well as look a little bit at the brain and how anxiety or depression or mood issues may come about after brain injury or even before brain injury, as well as some comorbidities between depression, anxiety, and brain injury. As you may notice as we go along, a lot of the symptoms associated with brain injury can also be associated with anxiety or depression. So it can kind of get really complicated. And then we'll look at some treatment options. I have some exercises for us to try so that we can stay awake and engaged. And if the lights are too dim and you're falling asleep, please let me know and we can do something about that. All right, so I want to start with asking you, what do you think mental health is? When you think of mental health, what does it sound like? What do you think it means? Who wants to jump in? Yes. Yeah, it's how you feel emotionally, absolutely. Other thoughts? Yeah, it could be calmness of mind or lack of calmness of mind, right? Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts? When you think of mental health? Yes. Happiness. Knowing what brings you happiness and so pursuing happiness, yeah. Knowing what makes you happy, what makes you feel good about yourself, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah, dealing with problems after an injury. Yeah, absolutely. So I like to think about it in terms of all these different aspects. And, we all experience distress and we all experience difficulties in our life to different degrees, right? Some more severe than others. I think how we deal with those situations, how we cope with them can actually make a huge difference in our mental health outcomes. Meaning 2 people can have very similar experiences, but they actually interpret it differently. They make sense of it differently. Maybe they have a different biology or a different way of responding to it. And they might actually do a lot better than this other person, even though the experience may be relatively similar. So it really has to do with your own perspective and how you handle those circumstances. So I like to think of it in all these different realms, right? Some people are spiritual, you need not be religious, and so do you feel connected to a higher power or to others, right? That is more in line with mental health. Do you feel a sense of joy, or are you mostly in despair? That kind of thing. And also in terms of physical functioning, do you feel like you're functional, like you actually are accomplishing what you need to accomplish, like you can do the things you enjoy doing, or do you have some limitations? And all those things can contribute to mental health. Questions, comments? So try not to look at the slide. I know it's already there, but when you think of depression, what does it, you know, make you think of? What comes to mind? Being sad. Yeah. Yes.
Hardship.
Hardship. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry? Listless? Yeah. Sort of like a blah feeling, like you're not happy, you're not enjoying yourself, you're, you know, things just have a more gloomy kind of feel to them. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Can you say more? What do you mean?
Like specifically going through a bottom of
Wow.
emotionally.
Yeah. So like there's no end to the suffering?
Yeah.
Like you can't find the answer?
Yeah, it's like, you know, our going up here, going down.
Yeah. Well, that's a very interesting visual. Yeah, absolutely. You can feel very hopeless, very helpless also. Yeah. What were you saying over there? Okay. Okay.
And that's where depression can come in to show it, or the anxiety.
Okay. Is it more like what do you mean by not matching up? Like your expectations or your goals, or what's not matching up? Okay. Okay. So maybe like your internal self and the external self, if there's just not, it's not consistent with others. Okay. Yeah. Maybe feeling misunderstood.
It's learning to deal with these hard times that we're making.
Absolutely. That can definitely be depressing in many ways, and we'll talk about that. Absolutely. So these are sort of the, like, you know, PER or DSM criteria, if you will. In order to like meet criteria for a depressive disorder, these are sort of the things we look at. So yeah, sadness, tearfulness, like things are just very gloomy. Other things that you may not be aware of, things like being easily fatigued. And this, again, as we'll talk more about after brain injury, that can also be an effect of brain injury, like limited endurance. These things are kind of difficult to get started. So it's important to consult with, you know, your provider and look at what are the differences. What is part of the brain injury? What might be a depression? Changes in appetite and sleep. Did anyone hear this before? Like depression can cause difficulty sleeping or eating? Yeah, and you never heard of it? You heard of it. And it can go either way. Like people may actually overeat or oversleep, or they may have really a hard time falling asleep, or difficulty with appetite, like they just don't want to eat at all. Yeah. You were isolating, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, you didn't want to be bothered. You just wanted to sleep. Yeah. Yeah, it felt like a deep hole. Yeah. It's similar, right? Like this endless pit, right? Yeah, and I think unless you have experienced it or have a family member, I think it can be very abstract and difficult for people to understand. So I really appreciate your examples. I think they, you know, can really paint a picture. Then limited interest in sex. And I can never pronounce this word. Libido, thank you. So low libido is actually a sign of depression as well. So all of these in isolation doesn't mean you're depressed. I'm sure we've all been tired. We've all had trouble with appetite. We've not always been very excited about sex, so that in itself is not an issue. It's a constellation of factors, right? Feeling that sort of helplessness, that sort of pit, you know, endless pit kind of feeling, like there's no hope. And then there's other stuff like being irritable and angry. Did you know this is a sign of depression? or could be a sign of depression. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Irritability or time.
Yes, they are. How so?
I've been there. There's times I'm so tired. I bark my dad sometimes about it. I don't even realize it.
Right.
Until he points it out, like, oh, I feel terrible.
Yeah. If you haven't had a very good night's sleep, it takes very little for you to snap at people, right? And you're just kind of on edge, a little jittery sometimes. Absolutely. Yeah, people get pissed off really easy. Exactly. And some of these symptoms, interesting enough, irritability and anger and low frustration tolerance, oftentimes are more present in male individuals. That's not to say that it doesn't happen in women, but it tends to manifest itself sometimes in males. And so sometimes we miss that it might be depression. We think guys are being guys. So, it's important to look at that. Then, interestingly enough, memory impairments. Did you know that your memory can be impaired when you have depression? Yeah. Why do you think that is? Yes. You can't think straight. You're so caught up in, whatever it is, right? Your frustration, your sadness, so it's difficult to concentrate probably because you're preoccupied. So you're not paying attention to what's going on in your environment. So you're not encoding that information in your brain, right? You might misplace things. You might forget appointments, things like that. And it doesn't mean that you're like cognitively impaired. It just means that the depression is possibly causing those issues. And of course, if you're a survivor of brain injury, you may already have some challenges with cognition and memory. So this would make it a lot worse. And then I think one key aspect of it that to look out for yourself and your loved one is decreased interest in activities that you used to enjoy. So this sort of like blondness, like nothing matters, like nothing's interesting, there's no purpose, it's like, who cares if it's sunny or rainy, just sort of this disconnect from what you used to enjoy. And then of course the hopelessness and helplessness, and feeling worthless, like, there's nothing you can do well. No one cares about you. You're, better off dead, perhaps. Suicidal ideation is a huge piece of it. Yes. It scares you to think about suicide? That's scary. What scares you about it? Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And, some people come to a place where they feel like that's the only option. And, for that particular moment in that particular person's life, that may be the case for them in their experience. So it's important to reach out, to your family, your caregivers, just whoever you trust when you feel that way, because there is help. But it is scary. There is hope. There's things we can do to help you. It may not be worth taking your own life, because death is a pretty permanent solution to some possible temporary problem. I mean, it might feel really permanent, really distressing, but we're all survivors, right? We've survived different things. So definitely it's possible to get the help you need. Any other questions or comments? Yeah.
The term that came to mind was depression blackout. When you can't remember things, think back.
There's like a gap of information.
Yeah. Like think back when you were depressed, like you have these blackouts of what what I call depression blackouts.
Yeah, and that may be a protective factor. Like, do we really want to remember how bad we felt? Yeah. Maybe, maybe not, right? And it could be part of like we were so caught up in it that we actually don't remember what happened. Yeah. And over there, yeah. Yes. Mm. What does it mean when depression and sadness in other people makes you want to get away from them? I think you want to be around happy people. Yeah, well, that's a good point. You know, I think sometimes we might need to detach ourselves a little bit from all that sadness and depression so that we can be healthy. You know, it doesn't mean we're not friends or we don't love our loved ones or whomever is depressed, but I think at some point we also need to take care of ourselves. So it might just be a natural reaction to wanting to not be depressed. You know, I don't think many people want to be depressed. So, yeah, very good point. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about anxiety. When you think of anxiety, what do you think of? Nervousness, palpitations, apprehension. Yeah, like tension maybe. Yeah. Feeling overwhelmed by other people. Yeah. Mhm. Maybe too much stimulation or something like that. Feeling overwhelmed. Yeah, your heart. You just want to escape. Yeah. So, mm, yeah. Some people can feel trapped in situations, right? It could be like a crowd of people. It could be in the plane or some other place. But anxiety is a very physical sort of set of symptoms. You can have sweaty palms, you can have palpitations, you can have this just, you know, increased heart rate, this sort of thing in the pit of your stomach. You can't breathe very well, shortness of breath. Yeah. Yeah, like maybe you're pacing around because you're trying to, like, you know, interesting enough, pacing around may actually make you more anxious, but we do that, right? Like we're trying to calm ourselves, but sometimes we might make it a little worse. So yeah, being preoccupied, constantly nervous, constantly worried about things. Like, so I think about like depression is sort of focused in the past, right? We might regret this, we might feel guilty about that, we might feel worthless, we might feel powerless or sad. And then anxiety is more like we're future tripping. We're constantly living in the future. We're constantly worried about what may or may not happen, how this person may or may not react, whether I may or may not have an escape route, you know, whether I may or may not, you know, be trapped in a situation. So it's really very future oriented. And, you know, in life, thank goodness we feel anxious and nervous, and we can, because it's really a survival sort of mechanism. If you think of like the saber-toothed tiger, right, in prehistoric times, you want to be able to either fight the saber-toothed tiger or run and hope the saber-toothed tiger is slower than you are, right? But sometimes, right, so that you can survive and reproduce and, you know, move on. But sometimes, you know, in day-to-day activities, if we're constantly in a state of alert or alarm, if we're constantly being chased by the imaginary saber-toothed tiger, it's a very distressing kind of place to be. You're constantly agitated, you're constantly worried, right? And sometimes in situations, we might also freeze, right? Especially if there's a lot of trauma involved. We might not fight or run from the saber-toothed tiger. We might just freeze and be eaten by it, right? So it can be quite distressing when it becomes such a chronic issue, but naturally it's actually good for survival. Thank goodness we have that response. And in large doses, stress and anxiety, it really is toxic for our body. Have you heard of cortisol? Yeah, the hormone that we produce when we're stressed. In large quantities, it can cause all kinds of distress to our body, actually, including our skin, or, you know, we have hair loss, we might have digestive issues, all kinds of trouble. Oh, so GAD is generalized anxiety disorder. That's like that's just a label for people who worry about a lot of different things all the time. It's very generalized. They worry about money, they worry about people, they worry about being in enclosed situations. They're constantly worrying. It's like constant worry. PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. Have people heard about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. What have you heard?
Veterans returning from war.
Yeah, so it is common in veterans returning from war, but it's actually pretty common in just general population. It usually has to do with either you experience a traumatic event or a set of traumatic events, or you saw someone you loved experience an event where you felt trapped, where you felt like your life was in danger, or that of a loved one, and then that causes symptoms of anxiety, and you might have flashbacks about it, you might have nightmares, you might be, distressed by that particular situation. And then phobias are like this little guy who probably has an elevator phobia, or like being enclosed, phobia about being in an enclosed place where escape might be limited, right? There's also like phobias of heights and spiders. Yeah, yeah. I think that's a pretty healthy fear, I would say. Right? You don't want to fall. Okay. I think we have good time. All right, so let's see here. So how do you think depression and anxiety may manifest in terms of, say, biologically? How do you think anxiety and depression may manifest biologically?
Digestive problems. Ulcers.
You could have ulcers.
Yeah, just because of all the stuff.
Yeah, you could have digestive problems. Let me see here. Okay. Yeah. You could definitely ulcer, digestive problems, muscle tension, right? Yeah, you might have even like, diarrhea actually. Yeah. Or even like vomiting, things like that. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And we say shortness of breath, aches and pain. So sometimes people have sort of diffuse pain and they're not quite sure why, and it could be a sign of anxiety or depression. All right, anything else? Oh, yeah. What about psychologically? How do you think they manifest? Like in your mind? I'm sorry? Worry. Yeah, worry about the future, the past, the present, concern, sleeplessness. Yeah, worry about, yeah.
Worry about nightmares.
Absolutely, yeah. Just being constantly worried about things. Thoughts, disturbing thoughts about like, oh my God, what if this happens? Or what if my nightmare comes true? Things like that. Pessimism, sort of like, yeah, like don't be so pessimistic, right? But that, it can manifest in that way, like nothing, like everything is just awful. There's no hope. And actually, this substance abuse piece could be psychological and also behavioral, but a lot of the time, substances can help us feel more at ease. We do things for a good reason. So if we're feeling quite anxious, we might gravitate towards a depressant like alcohol, or, if we're feeling depressed, we might gravitate to something a little more stimulating, like, marijuana can also depress you, but, maybe marijuana or cocaine or something like that, or a painkiller. So, that's something to look out for as well. Comments, questions so far? Yes, and then over there. Warm milk?
Yeah.
I don't know. What do y'all think? For what?
Supposedly for cats.
For cats? You know what? I think warm milk is pretty good and pretty benign. If you think it helps you, why not? Huh? For sleeping, it could help. I don't know the science behind that. There may be something about the lactose, or, it could all be placebo for all we know. I don't know. But if it helps you, yeah. But, there may be science behind that I'm not aware of. Yeah. Huh. What I do know, what I can tell you, like there's this chemical called oxytocin that actually is available in breast milk that does have a calming effect, that also has a bonding effect. So I don't know if cow's milk may have some of that. So it's possible that chemically there's something going on, but you know, maybe just having something warm can be comforting. So if it helps you, do it. Yes. In some places. Why not try it? Mm.
And I don't think you should disregard it, you know, that's what you go. And you know what? At the same time, you have a lot of friends that, you know,
the 70s, you mean?
Except for the fact that
yeah. It can cause legal issues, yeah.
But at the same time, coming from the beginning of the past, it was quite prevalent.
It still is pretty prevalent.
Why make it such a new thing within the century?
So people are debating the therapeutic value of marijuana. This is an interesting topic. This should be a whole topic in itself, I think, for TBI Matters. The therapeutic benefits. So I do believe that there's definitely, what is the right answer that I want to give here? It's a sensitive topic. I need to be careful. I can be honest with you, just 1 minute, back there and then over there. I can be honest with you that from a harm reduction perspective, marijuana may be less damaging than other substances, including alcohol and cigarettes. So from that harm reduction perspective, I can see that with the guidance of a physician, and if it helps you with appetite or pain or other things, that there may be a therapeutic value. I think there is a sort of a fine line between that and abusing it, because it also does have side effects. And interestingly enough, one of the main side effects is cognitive impairment over a long period of time. They've done some studies with like teenagers, especially if you start really early on, and they've noticed actually cognitive decline in especially the young brain who uses marijuana for prolonged periods of time. So, yeah. And so, it's sort of a fine line, but I think it could definitely be a separate topic of conversation. Your cognitive, right? What the heck? Let's enjoy life, right? Oh my goodness. And then, I'm so glad you mentioned it. As a survivor of brain injury, whether it's stroke or blunt force trauma or any other type, we highly discourage any type of substances that are non-prescribed, because it does have very interesting effects on your brain. One of them, so not only does it alter our brain functioning, that's why we use it, right? We might feel disinhibited, we might feel more relaxed, but it can also actually cause you to like trip and fall and injure yourself. And it also, metabolizes through your kidneys, and so it could cause, other issues. So in fact, for survivors, we really discourage any substances. Right? It could have side effects with the medications, exactly. But so, great point. I'll think more about it, and we can talk maybe more on the break. But there was back there, lady over there, and then the gentleman over there. Okay. Thank you. Okay, that's good. Yeah. Sorry. Can I stop you so I can repeat? I'm supposed to repeat and I keep forgetting. I get carried away. So there's a gentleman talking about, he represents the Social Security Administration, and he's speaking about how if you are found to use substances like marijuana, you can be considered a criminal. Is that It is,
And
yeah.
secondly, what happens is the judge
Interesting.
and
So your testimony can be discredited if you have been known to use substances. Okay. Yeah.
Secondly, I have a gentleman that I did represent who's been off marijuana for a couple of years. This was in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And the judge was questioning the hearing, and he says, "Are you still using cannabis?" And he said, "No." He said, "I stopped in January 2010." And he said, "Why?" And he said, "Because it was making me so paranoid, I couldn't help it."
So it is possible to have adverse consequences. Thank you. There's definitely adverse consequences. Not everyone responds the same to different THC or the substance in marijuana. We actually have THC receptors in our brain. So for some of us, it can make us paranoid. Some of us can make us sleepy, others angry. So it can have different effects. There was a lady in the back and then the gentleman over there. Yeah. Molasses. Oh, molasses and milk. Is that for sleep also? I guess sweet milk. Okay. Maybe there's something in the molasses. Thank you. What about you over there? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a foreign substance, right?
I believe the effect on that varies.
They do vary.
It's a variable effect.
Mm-hmm.
But good for one is not necessarily good for poison gold.
Yeah, it can definitely vary. I think in general there is a consensus that it may not be very therapeutic in the long run, but it absolutely can have different effects. It can manifest differently. Yeah.
I'm just going to say I support the belief that back when Governor Brown was in 2008, he actually did put the guidelines for what typically medical conditions is. It's only about one paragraph, but there's about 15 different potential uses for marijuana.
So there's a list that Governor Brown put together.
Yeah, I can send you that one.
With medical conditions that may.
And there is concerns that the reason why the city nowadays wants to shut down most of the clinics that are too close to schools is they're having studies not as adults. So the brain is still growing as a child.
Mm-hmm.
That does the issues. I think the issues are not when you're an adult. For me personally, I think my issues are I get more like testers are more, quick like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if marijuana would.
A little more on them.
I don't know. But the point I think one nowadays really frustrating is I think there's a lot of people coming into the medicinal marijuana clinic do not actually need it, and then they're recreational. So there's a lot
of sketchy use of the medical marijuana, and there's a lot of. That's right, and that doesn't happen all the time. And there's a lot of use that happens with our teens who happen to access, marijuana. And I just want to comment that I think it can be damaging for both children and adults for different reasons. So, as we're developing, our brain is sort of starting to expand, and so there's so much potential for damage in that regard. And as we get older, we actually lose neurons and connections. So we really don't want to cause further damage, because we will decline with age as it is. So if we're adding other things, it might make it worse over time. So this gentleman and then over there. Uh-huh. Yeah, it's. I think there's definitely physicians out there who are just stamping that card, right? But okay, and there was over there and here, and then I think we need to move on. So that lady over there and lady over here. Oh yeah, if you're looking for a job. Yeah. Yeah, so absolutely. So your employer can get you tested in certain jobs, and actually THC does last I think about a few weeks really. You might have smoked last month and it might still be in your system now. So And then final comment, and we are going to move on. I'm happy to discuss this further.
What we're here for?
Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for that. So, but this is a great topic. Perhaps we should have our own talk about this. And then some of the social manifestations could be isolation and interpersonal problems, right? So if you're angry and irritable because you're not sleeping, because you're anxious, you're probably not very fun to be around. People might not like you very much, right? You might be upsetting your loved ones, so you might be pushing them away. Or maybe you're so depressed, you're just like stuck in a, in a place, figuratively and literally where you don't want to leave your house, right? So it can have serious, consequences. So this is how I like to think about everything really, but in particular, mental illness. And so really there's different factors that contribute to whether or not someone is susceptible to experiencing mental illness and, mental illness within the spectrum, right? We all struggle, we all have challenges, but at what point does it become clinically significant where we need to intervene and do things like that? So, so biologically, there's a lot of different factors. So you might be genetically predisposed to mental illness. Maybe there's mental illness in your family. Maybe there's substance use challenges in your family. Those are factors that are carried on genetically. So you're already at risk just by nature of who you are as a person if you have that history. Also, there may be acquired changes in biology due to brain injury. So after brain injury, there may be actual shifts in how your brain works, in your biology of your brain and your body, right? Because it can be a very catastrophic event, not just for your brain, but for your whole body, because your brain controls everything you do, right? So there might be some organ failure that happens if you had a brain injury. There may be all kinds of issues, right? You may have had to have a feeding tube. You may have not been able to breathe, things like that. So that can actually cause changes in the way your brain now functions biologically, right? So that puts you at risk. Comments, questions? Yes. The genetic predisposition, yeah.
That sometimes can skip a generation.
It could. And with genetic stuff, I think if you look at the literature for anything really, everything's like 50% genetic, 50% what you do with it. You may have a genetic predisposition for diabetes, but if you take care of yourself, you may never get diabetes. So it's actually about 50-50 for everything when you look at the, more of the details. So you may skip it because you chose to do things differently for yourself. And we'll talk about that, like things you can do in spite of the challenges you may have been born with or encountered in life. You can still, do things differently. Other causes of mental illness from a psychological perspective could be low self-esteem, which can be tied to a number of different things like trauma, not being in a safe home environment, not having the proper attachments or connection to people that should have cared for us. And then there's also the social aspect, right? If you're growing up in an unsafe environment where there's a lot of violence, where there's a lot of poverty, maybe a lot of, just trauma, maybe like immigration trauma or historical trauma, right? Feeling oppressed, that can also cause damage to your person, not just who you are as a person and how you feel about yourself, but it can also affect your brain actually. But that's another story. Any questions or comments so far? So the message here is, even if you're biologically predisposed or if you had a brain injury or know someone who had a brain injury, that doesn't mean you're doomed to suffer. You can actually change. And in fact, making changes in how you relate to yourself, how you relate to others, can actually cause changes in brain structure and function. So you can actually, how you perceive the world, say for example, you're more optimistic, that can actually start changing things in your brain. So it's pretty amazing. All right. So this is some of the stuff I think I already alluded to, but basically, I'm going to be very brief here. I was going to have a little cartoon, but I couldn't find the right link. But basically, we have two systems, the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. Have you heard of this? The parasympathetic is your helper. It helps you when you're stressed. It helps you calm down. It helps you relax. The sympathetic nervous system, it becomes activated when you're in danger. So if you notice, I don't know if you can tell, the pictures may not be very clear, but when your sympathetic nervous system is activated, everything is accelerated. Everything's working at 100 miles an hour, right? We said we're in a constant state of alert. On the other hand, your parasympathetic nervous system helps you slow down. So we want our parasympathetic nervous system to be activated at an optimal capacity and our sympathetic nervous system to be more mellow. So maybe that visual can help you when you're feeling stressed. You're like, okay, parasympathetic nervous system, you have to be functioning at a more optimal capacity. Yeah, it's like when you're sleeping, when you're relaxed, when you're just calm. The parasympathetic one. The sympathetic one's when you're like panicking. The fight, flight, freeze. Yeah, fight, flight, freeze would be the sympathetic. The parasympathetic would be like meditation or relaxation, which we'll do some of today, actually. So stay tuned. Questions? Comments? We're good? All right, and then again, just a little brief, let's see, where am I here? Talking a little bit about the brain. And so we have 4 lobes in our brain. We have the frontal lobe, it's in front of our head. The temporal lobe is by our temples here. Occipital lobe is in the back, and parietal lobe is kind of in the center here. And the frontal lobe is in charge of like executive functioning, planning, you know, attention, concentration, things like that. What was it? Memory is the temporal lobe, actually. Memory lives in the temporal lobe. The occipital lobe is in charge of vision. And if you think about it logically, it makes sense because it's projecting into your occipital lobe is projecting out into your visual field. One color is this down here. This area is like the medulla, the pons, and this is the cerebellum. That's like the primitive part of our brain. So if you notice, the primitive part of our brain has gotten smaller, the new part of our brain has gotten bigger. So we've evolved to have higher functioning, higher order cognitive abilities. And then there's the limbic system. This is very important because the limbic system actually controls our emotion regulation. And it's composed of different things like the thalamus, which is our relay station. Like think of it the train station, right? It connects different neurons in the brain. The hypothalamus is in charge of different functions like breathing, eating, hormonal regulation, things like that. I'm sorry? What's an autopilot? The hypothalamus? Huh. Perhaps it could be more automatic. It could be, and the hypothalamus is also involved with the fight, flight, freeze response. And then the frontal lobe has to do with decision making and planning, and the olfactory lobe has to do with what we smell, right? And evolutionarily speaking, our olfactory system is involved in emotion regulation because a lot of what we remember is smells, right? Like grandma's cookies, or how this smells really dirty, or this smells really clean, or you know. A lot of it sort of, it's connected to emotion, right? Like when we smell clean clothes, things like that. So, and then most important, well, everything's important, but the hippocampus, that has to do with learning and memory. That is a part of the brain that helps us process memories. And the amygdala is basically our emotion regulation center. So if you think about all these different components, it makes sense that emotion regulation is very complex, right? It involves smelling, it involves memory, it involves fight-flight response, it involves emotion regulation, it involves processing of information between different circuits, and it involves decision-making and loving, or frontal lobe, right? So it's quite complex. So when you have a brain injury, just the fact that you have a brain injury can actually affect, you can see with this illustration, hopefully, that it can affect your emotion, your ability to regulate your emotions, because our emotions are regulated in our brain. Actually, everything we do is regulated in our brain. This is very important because the amygdala, so it's the shape of an almond. It actually means almond in like Latin or something. And it actually, this is very interesting. It adds emotional significance to what we do. It creates meaning in context to what we're experiencing. And it also helps us receive input from different sensory systems. When there is damage to the amygdala, people sometimes don't feel fear, right? So you can imagine that's not very What's the word I'm looking for? Safe. Thank you. There's another word. But yes, it's not very safe to not feel fear, right? You would get yourself in trouble. Right? Exactly. You might be more impulsive. You might, run across the street without looking and get run over or something like that. Right? But, yes. So depends what the tumor is and how it's affecting the structure of the brain. It could pretty much be on any part of the brain. That's interesting. I think what I've noticed is that tumors that are like in the parietal area are a little more sensitive because people can lose sensation. So if you think about the different parts of the brain, depending on where your tumor is and if it needs to be resected or how it affects other parts, or maybe there was a surgery and there's this piece of lobe missing or damaged, you would have that particular consequence or symptom as a result of that. So if your frontal lobe is damaged, you would have difficulty with inhibition. You might start cursing and you might start taking off your clothes in front of people. You might not be able to plan or problem solve or make decisions. If your temporal lobes are damaged, you might have more memory problems. If your occipital lobe is damaged, you might have more visual problems. And if your parietal lobe is damaged, you might have difficulty with movement, because that's the areas of the brain that are controlling. I'm sorry? The location of the damage is what's important. Yeah. Okay. And actually, sometimes with like diffuse axonal problems, like when someone has a car accident and there's not one particular area of the brain that was damaged, but the whole brain, there was some diffuse, basically the axons were torn, then you see more global issues. You might see all of the above. You might see visual issues, language issues, learning issues, movement, because it's very diffused across the whole brain. It's not just one area. Okay. Any other thoughts? Yes. Uh-huh. I don't know. I think tumors tend to spread. And especially if it's a tumor that started somewhere else and then metastasized to the brain, that's probably a pretty bad tumor. Yeah. Yeah. It can be very damaging. All right. So what do you think happens to the body and the brain when someone suffers brain injury? You may just guess, or it depends. Let's say just more globally speaking. What kinds of issues might someone with brain injury experience? There may be some social difficulties. Yeah.
Their equilibrium could be off.
Their equilibrium and balance could be off. Absolutely. So there can be some balance issues. What else? Yes. Vision problems. Yeah. I'm sorry? Relating? Yeah, like talking with people, or language problems also. Yeah. Communication. Yeah. Communication. Absolutely. Uh-huh. Memory impairments. Yep. What else? 1 minute. Most difficulty with multitasking? Yeah. It's very possible, yeah. Yeah, you can lose your ability to speak. And that could be due to, like, maybe you were in a coma and your muscles were deteriorated. Or it could also mean that your part of the brain that controls language is damaged. Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts? I'm sorry? Yeah, difficulty focusing. Absolutely. Yeah. Emotion. Yeah, thank you. You would have difficulty, you may have, I wouldn't say you will have, you may have difficulties regulating your emotions. What about the concept of time? You may lose track of time. Yeah. So it could be like sensory issues or perceptual issues, right? Even like depth perception might be a problem. Yeah, over there. Physical limitations, yeah. They can range from balance issues. You might have difficulties with bowel and bladder. I mean, it can really affect the whole body. Yeah. Any others? Yes, over there? No? Okay. No? No more? So, yes, you covered them all. But in a nutshell, you can have physical, emotional, and cognitive issues. And there you are. You're pretty good. And of course, these issues can affect interpersonal relationships, as we talked about, right? In particular, like your sense of self, your sense of self-efficacy, your self-esteem, and, you know, daily functioning, right? Usually individuals go from being pretty independent, functioning pretty well, they have a job, they have a family, and then something happens. They have a car accident, or they have a stroke, or a tumor, or something, and then they have all these constellation of challenges, right? So obviously, they're going to need a lot of support, and it's going to take time to, you know, feel again like yourself. And, you know, perhaps a different self, but still feel good about who you are after that injury. Comments? And we talked about this actually. So the nature of the injury, meaning the part of the brain that was injured. Actually, I don't think we did talk about this. Never mind. So I think there's two components. One is the biological aspect, right? That if there's brain injury, there's different parts of the brain that were injured that would have particular consequences. And then there's also the fact that you're no longer your old self. That could cause difficulty with adjustment, issues around anxiety or depression, low self-esteem, things like that. So it's a double whammy, right? You might be like biochemically, you know, disbalanced because of your injury, and you don't feel good about yourself. So you really are at a higher risk for suffering from depression or anxiety. And is it time for a break? I think it is. Why don't we take a break and continue? Thank you, everyone. Should I turn this off? So I think I want to go ahead and, what's wrong?
We're good.
We're good. I wanted to mention something that someone came up and brought up, which I thought was really important. And this idea that not everyone who suffers from a brain injury or has a family member with a brain injury is necessarily going to suffer from depression or anxiety, that some people actually find meaning in their life, and they're optimistic, and they find new ways to be with their new challenges. So I did want to mention that the reason we're focusing on this is sort of as an awareness so that we can help individuals who may be struggling in these ways, but obviously not everyone is going to suffer these kinds of issues. And these are some, you know, brief statistics about the prevalence of anxiety and depression after brain injury. And if I get really good segue, really the research overall states that about 30% of individuals, so 1/3 or 3 out of 10, may suffer from anxiety or depression issues, but the other 60+% need not experience those kinds of issues. So, you know, something to be optimistic about. And depression and anxiety can coexist with symptoms, as we said, regarding brain injury in terms of all the different limitations that may come with brain injury. And one important piece that does put individuals at risk for depression or anxiety is pre-existing history. So if you were already anxious or depressed or had substance abuse challenges before a brain injury, you're more likely to experience some sort of exacerbation of that after brain injury. Comments, questions? Do the lights get really bright? Can you still see? Do you prefer less lights, more lights? Less lights? This is good? Okay. All right. What did I do? I think we already, you know, so some of the symptoms of depression, anxiety can mimic some of the just natural progression of brain injury recovery, and they can also exacerbate how we feel. So, you know, I think it is important to be aware of mood changes. You may or may not experience them. Your family member may not experience them. But just keep in mind that this is possible and reach out to them, right? So if they used to be very social, very engaging, and all of a sudden they're isolated, they're not bathing, they're, you know, really disconnecting, they're, you know, something just doesn't quite feel right, then I think you could definitely consider that a red flag and reach out, because they may not reach out to you. Okay, so I want to spend the rest of our time here, I guess, before we do any questions or final comments. Oh God. No? So what do we do? So these are the secrets of the trade that I'm going to tell you. So this is very coveted information. You have to pay a lot of money to get this information. So, you know, are you ready? Right? All right, he's ready. So I want to talk about resiliency, actually. And I do have an article I want to share with you. It's very brief. It's one page. It has some suggestions for how to foster resiliency. And so one of the treatments for feeling better about ourselves, not just, you know, if we have depression or anxiety, but just feeling better about ourselves, is actually fostering resiliency. Do you know what resiliency is? What is it? You can pass them out, yeah. Bouncing, the ability to bounce back, to be flexible, right? Yeah.
Be able to learn from your experience.
To learn from your experience.
Just say to yourself, I'm going to be far better than I was before.
Yeah, have a positive outlook in life. I'm going to be better than I was before. Yeah.
Someone in the family is an example of what they went through. What they did.
You can also look for examples in people in your life that may have had some challenges and they overcame, and you can be inspired by that. Absolutely. I would say we all are resilient. That's why we're here in this world. I think to some degree or other, we all have the capacity to be resilient. Some of us more than others, but I think it's important to foster that. And I think I really like this picture because it captures, you know, this flower growing in the desert, right? So despite adversity, you can actually flourish. You can be better. You can feel good about yourself. So that's one aspect of it. There's other things that you can do just day to day to help you feel better about yourself, despite whatever possible limitations you might have, physical or cognitive or emotional. And I realize that some of these may or may not apply to you as a person, either because of preference or because of some limitations you might have. But things like exercising can be really therapeutic. And these things are free, actually. By the way, these are free treatments you can do for yourself. You don't have to pay hundreds of dollars to get this insight. You know, you can exercise. And this doesn't mean you have to go have a gym membership or, you know, join some expensive club. You can walk around. You can garden. You can do different things, again, based on your abilities, based on your functioning. But there's a lot of things you can do. Sleeping well, easier said than done, huh? Like the coveted, like, I heard that mattress producers, or, you know, it's like a huge industry because they're always selling you the mattress that will help you sleep better. I want to tell you the secret that it's a lie. It's not your mattress that's going to help you sleep better. You can have the best mattress in the world and still not sleep at all. So don't buy into it. Don't buy a $3,000 mattress hoping you'll sleep better. There's other things you can do to sleep better, and I'll show you. So for free. And they won't cost $3 billion, exactly. There's things you can do like praying or meditating, and if you're not a spiritual or religious person, meditation need not be like about God. It could just be about disconnecting yourself from your thoughts, right? We said that we, you know, if we're depressed, we usually tend to focus on the past and feel guilty and have remorse and things like that. And if we're anxious, we tend to like jump into the future. So meditation really helps you focus on the moment, which is all we have, really, if you think about it. There's nothing we can do about the past. There's some we can do about the future in terms of making choices and changes in our lives, but we can't really predict what's going to happen. So being hung up over there in the future is not very healthy either, right? all we have is today, right this second, right? So that can be very helpful, and I'll teach you some of that. Eating well is another piece. And again, you don't have to buy fancy food. You don't have to go to Whole Foods and spend, you know, $5,000 on bread. I'm sorry? They will take your money, exactly. Try some other alternatives. But, you know, reducing like your salt intake, you know, eating healthier, you know, less sugar, a little more vegetables, you know, just having more of a balanced approach. And having hobbies, you know, feeling like there's a purpose for you in life and you do things that you enjoy. It could be collecting rocks for all we know. I actually used to collect rocks as a kid. You might think that's silly, but that was a fun hobby of mine, and I would put it in, like, you know, egg cartons. So whatever keeps you engaged, whatever you enjoy, it could be reading, it could be, I don't know, volunteering somewhere, whatever it is. And of utmost importance is social support. And actually the literature time and time again talks about how social support is like the #1 healing factor. If you can trust someone with your sorrows, if you can feel supported by one person, if you can have that one mentor, that one entity that makes a difference in your life will be changed. So, you know, foster those friendships, those connections, those people in your life. Other things you can do is avoid caffeine, alcohol, and drugs. And I know we had a discussion about drugs already, so we're not going to dwell on that. But, you know, why would we want to avoid caffeine? It keeps you awake at night, right? So sometimes, actually, most of the sleep problems can be addressed with behavioral changes. There's some where people might have like a biological, you know, issue like sleep apnea. Even sleep apnea, you can actually address it with behavioral changes, such as losing weight or exercising more, things like that. So I would say like 90% of the sleep issues you can really improve on your own by making changes in how you live your life, really. And caffeine is one of them. And if you must have your cup of coffee, have it in the morning. If you have it later in the day, it will keep you up. And even if I hear people like, oh, I take like 3 cups of coffee and it helps me go to bed. And perhaps it does, but my guess is you're probably not getting the restful sleep you need. You're probably waking up really tired and not rested. So then it might as well be that you didn't sleep at all, right? So it's really about the quality of sleep as well. Was there a comment over there, or a question or suggestion?
I try to avoid coffee, cut out coffee at all.
Yeah.
Cut out coffee all. On a daily basis, whatever you do, the caffeine is in your body.
And you know what's interesting? You know, I used to have just like a little bit, and I was so sensitive. I'm already kind of wired naturally, so I was like this. And if I have chocolate like after dinner, I will be awake all night. So different people have, if this is a true story, different people have different tolerance. So, you know, check what works for you. But when I went caffeine-free, almost caffeine-free, because I do have a Coke now and then, but almost caffeine-free, I actually naturally do feel more energy. I do sleep better because my cycles are not all just, you know, combobulated with, because when you have caffeine, you crash, right? A couple hours later, you crash, then you need more caffeine, then you crash again. So that's not a natural place for your body to be. It's not a natural response. So one thing you could possibly do is avoid caffeine. But if that's your only vice, I say keep the caffeine and stop the drugs and the marijuana and everything else. So harm reduction. That's true. Sometimes medicines can put you to sleep. Yeah. So maybe you can consult with your physician and discuss, can you take these medicines later in the day? Do they have to be in the morning? Can they just be like before bedtime if they're going to make you sleep? You know, how can you optimize your treatment? Yeah.
I was going to say, it's also about what your body is supposed to do. Because I remember one time I looked at how I got migraines. Humidity, food, behavior.
Being dehydrated, yeah.
Hydrated, exactly. But one of the things they always say is never have caffeine. But chocolate actually helps with my headache.
Yeah, and it has a little bit of caffeine.
It helps with my blood vessels, I think.
Chocolate is just a little bit of a stimulant. It also has antioxidants and things like that. So I think it depends on what form you take it, probably, and like what dose and how often and things like that.
Besides that, when I try to get up all caffeine and hit it all at once, not a good idea. Because you can take it. So if you go out caffeine.
You can, because you're like, you know, you're like totally wired, right? Yeah, cold turkey, not good. And then if you do wean yourself off caffeine, you might notice you're irritable, you're angry, you're lashing out at people. I mean, you can withdraw from caffeine, so it's definitely interesting. You can harm reduce to tea. You can definitely harm reduce to tea.
I found that I would have iced tea at lunch, and that night I could.
Yeah.
I'd be wired all
It's, yeah, or even like jittery, yeah.
Yeah, so tea has caffeine.
It does have caffeine. But there's different strengths, and some people may be okay with having some tea in the morning. So again, you know, do some like experimental, you know, tests with yourself and see what works for you. Another thing that, you know, I would recommend is if you are sort of feeling like you're at the other side of the spectrum where things are just very challenging, all the different things that we're going to learn today, you've tried them and they're really not helping, you might need to get some professional help and perhaps even medication to help with balancing your mood and your thoughts and things like that. And we will be talking about like breathing exercises and muscle relaxation and things like that you can do. Any questions, comments? Yes. Lifestyle change, exactly. It's a life-changing event, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's a great point. It's about a lifestyle change. It's not about these interventions. It's about how you perceive the world, how you integrate your experiences into your new life. And once it becomes a lifestyle, it's no longer like, oh, I really miss that caffeine, or, oh, you know, I'm missing this or missing that. It's more like, oh, I have a fulfilling life. I actually am happy with myself. And it's cumulative, right? The better you feel about yourself, the better you feel about yourself. But the opposite is true. The worse you feel about yourself, the worse you feel about yourself. So it does require some like shift. Absolutely. So anyway, exercise. So in the spirit of exercising, why don't we get up from our chairs, and we're just going to do a little bit of like waking up since it's already 7:30. Yes, it is 7:30. And again, you know, based on your comfort level, we're just going to just stretch, you know, whatever that looks for you. I like to stretch my neck. You can even like march in place. Yeah. Stretch. Shake your hands. I don't know, turn around. And even if you're in your chair, you can still kind of exercise when you're sitting. Like if you have a job maybe that requires you to sit a lot, you can take little breaks from typing. You can, you know, take little neck breaks. Good. We're all stretched out. Should start dancing. I should have brought like a, I know, right? Like some salsa dancing or something. Good. Believe it or not, this is exercise. So again, it doesn't need to be, you know, running or jogging or going to the gym or anything like that. I personally don't like the gym, so I try to avoid, you know, try to pretend I'm exercising otherwise. All right. Good. And then there's breathing exercises. Have you heard of breathing exercises? What stories have you heard about it?
Just take a deep breath out.
Yeah.
Like usually when you're running the other way, take a deep breath just as you're rising. Breathe out.
Breathe out. Yeah. Yes, someone back there.
That and a tip that whenever you're stressed out, it's good to stop, take time.
Yeah.
Do that also helps.
Yes. So the breathing can help you settle yourself and take the anxiousness out of your thoughts. Absolutely. And actually, the breathing helps in two main ways. One is that, believe it or not, you can't be relaxed and anxious at the same time. It's not possible. I'm sorry?
You have a pretty big brain on.
Oh, there you go. Absolutely. So you can't. So your brain is not able to be stressed and relaxed at the same time. So, and your brain usually, even though we multitask, you can't be worried and calm at the same time. So if you're focused on breathing, that in itself is taking your mind away from whatever's worrying you. But it's also like actually producing more oxygen in your blood. It's actually physically relaxing you as well. Okay? So I'm going to teach you a breathing exercise. Can we dim the lights for this one? Thank you. So I want you to just sit in a comfortable position. You may close your eyes or leave them open, just stare somewhere that's non-distracting. And you can also do this at night. Actually, this is really good exercise, and I try it myself sometimes. When you can't sleep at night, you can put your hand on your stomach and lie back and then do a few breathing exercises. You'll be surprised. You'll fall asleep. Try it whenever it happens to you that you can't fall asleep. But I like to put my hand on my stomach only because what I'm going to teach you is diaphragmatic breathing, basically breathing with your stomach. Because I don't know if you noticed, but especially as we get older, we start breathing very shallow, kind of from the upper, I don't know, chest area. But really, we need to breathe from our stomach, right? Little babies, have you seen little babies with their bellies? They actually breathe with their stomach. That's like the right way of breathing. Then we just learn to breathe incorrectly, and that's why we're constantly like agitated and tense. So the breathing is very simple. I'm going to explain it, and then we'll do it. You're going to breathe in through your nose and expand your stomach like if it was a balloon. Okay. Then you're going to hold it for a few seconds, like 5. And after that, very, very, very slowly, you're going to breathe out through your mouth and contract your stomach. So you're deflating that balloon, right? So you're inflating the balloon when you breathe in, deflating it when you breathe out, okay? We're going to do this for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 breaths, okay? All right. Breathe in, expand, hold it for a few seconds, and very, very slowly you're going to breathe out and contract your stomach. No matter what thoughts or what sounds you hear or what interesting ideas come to mind, just focus on the breathing. Breathe in, hold it, breathe out. Don't be afraid to just let it all out. Better relax your muscles. If you notice any tension like in your neck, or I sometimes feel it in my jaw, you know, wherever you feel it. Breathe in, hold it, very slowly, breathe out. Two more. Breathe in, hold it, very slowly, breathe out. One last time. This one we're going to do very slowly. Breathe in, very deeply, hold, breathe out, very slowly. All right, when you're ready, if you have your eyes closed, open them. If you're falling asleep, wake up. Good. How's that? It is calming. It sort of disconnects you a little bit from what's going on. All right. I'm sorry? Lights down good? All right, perfect. Trying to be a democracy here. What is it? Yes, right. We try. So anyway, these slides will be available to you, so you can keep this as reference. Any thoughts about doing this exercise? Was it weird? Was it interesting? Both? It was pretty cool. Yeah. This is a precursor of meditating. It's a sneaky way to teach you to meditate. Yeah. So the meditating aspect of this is just, you just focus on your breath. Whatever distractions you might have, you just focus on your breath. And if you do think about other things, I think sometimes people feel like, oh, I'm really bad at meditating. I keep thinking of other things. We all keep thinking about things. That's just part of meditating. You just bring it back and you kindly remind yourself to focus on the breathing, and eventually it gets a little easier. And so that wandering mind, that's part of why we're meditating, right? If we were like not wandering in our mind, we didn't need to meditate. So we need to be kind to ourselves. Yeah. Hold on. Yeah, you can think about smelling the flowers. You can have an image in your mind about maybe like a place that makes you feel like safe or comfortable. I like a beach scene, feeling like I'm under a palm tree or something. So yeah, you can have some sort of image to go with that. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we get, like I think,
Yep.
somewhat of a joke too, I guess, but I think they were saying something like we typically use only like 1/3 of our capacity of our lungs. And what they're saying is that as we get older, we need to get the habit, because that's why a lot of people get pneumonia, because there's such shallow breathing.
Yeah.
That's basically the lungs are your muscles.
Yeah.
Keep those engaged.
That's right. Use it or lose it, right?
Everything else with the lungs, everything.
It does, yeah. And the breathing, yeah, it's very important for any kind of exercises, even walking, right? If you breathe, if you focus on the breathing, you may not lose your breath as easily, right? I mean, it's good cardio. It's really, it helps with muscle relaxation because you're getting more oxygen in your blood. And we are air. Yeah, our body runs on air and water. So stay hydrated. Other important aspect of that. Okay, good. Any other comments? Yes.
I chose not to drive, so I literally walk everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's good exercise.
Yeah, I find it's much easier just taking those. I find it much easier just walking.
Yeah, walking can be it could be meditative. It could, if you're sort of pacing yourself, and it could sort of calm you down. It could be soothing. Yeah.
Good wear and tear on shoes.
Right, exactly. You need lots of shoes. All right. Let me see what I have here. So I have 2 more exercises, and then I think we're done. Yeah, very good. So have you heard of progressive muscle relaxation? No, no one has? Yes, over there. Yes. What is it? Mm-hmm. When you go through your body, tensing and relaxing your muscles. Good. Between relaxation. It can help with pain management. Absolutely. They have free apps. They have free YouTube videos. Yeah. Absolutely. So I'm going to teach you one particular one, but if you're so inclined, you can Google it. I'm sure you can find different variations. This is a simple one. And it's just basically sort of scanning your body. And it's a little silly. I'm going to make a silly face, so just bear with me here. But basically, we're going to start with like tensing our face muscles. We're going to release, and we're going to incorporate the breathing, right? So when you tense, you breathe in. When you untense, you breathe out, because that's the natural sort of progression of it. Then we're going to move to our shoulders. Again, tense, and then release. And then we'll go through it. I'm just explaining it first. And then we're going to do the arms, or I guess we're going to do like fists, forearms. And then we're going to do our stomach, like tuck in our belly button back to our spine, sort of have that visual. And then we're going to do our thighs. We're going to lift our thighs like this. And then we're going to do our calves, so tippy toe. And finally, we're going to do our toes. We're going to like make a toe fist, I guess. what would you call it? I don't know. Wrinkle, clench, curl your toes. So we're going to start with the face, okay? So you're going to make like the ugliest face you can imagine. And you're going to breathe in when you do that and breathe out when you release, okay? And you're going to do that for about, I don't know, 3 seconds, okay? Let's get started. Make sure you breathe out very nicely, thoroughly. We're going to go with our shoulders. We're going to move them as far up close to our ears as we can. We're going to breathe in when we do that and then breathe out. We're going to make fists. Again, breathe in when you make the fist. Release, breathe out. And we're going to tuck our belly. Breathe in. Release, out. We're going to lift our thighs. I guess our legs to tighten our thighs as far as we can. And then we're going to breathe out. We're going to do our calves. Breathe in, breathe out. And finally, our toes. You can do it with your shoes on. And I just want you to scan your body. Notice any tension. If you still feel like there's some tension in your neck, maybe you need to do another shoulder shrug. If there's tension anywhere else in your face, you can do a face shrug. And when you're ready, just come back. Relax. How was that? Is that good? I like this. And this again you can do before you go to bed. Actually, you can do this at any time. Even in the bus, people might think it's a little weird, but who cares? But you can do it anywhere. Don't do it while you're driving. Very true. Be mindful when you're driving, right? Exactly. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to incorporate the breathing with perhaps imagery, if that suits you. And we're just going to sit here for maybe 5 minutes. We're just going to sit with our thoughts. We're going to accept our thoughts, but try to come back to the breathing. You don't have to do anything fancy. You can do whatever you want. Just sit comfortably. You can close your eyes or not. And just focus on your breathing. It doesn't have to be deep breathing. It can just be what it is. Notice any tension in your body. Just try to breathe through it. What I mean by that is, as you're breathing, just focus on that area. Try to release that tension. When thoughts come to mind, just gently let go of them. Focus on the breathing. Think about what a great night's sleep you're going to have today. Maybe think about things that make you feel happy, relaxed, or people that make you feel happy and relaxed. And as your mind wanders again, as it usually will, just come back to your breathing. Perhaps begin to think about all the things you're grateful for, or the people. Think about your strengths, your resiliency. Continue to focus on your breathing. Just follow your breathing. If it feels like you need to take a deep breath, do it. Otherwise, just continue to relax. Set all worries aside. Focus on the moment where you are sitting right now. Feel the chair in your body. When you're ready, come back. Open your eyes. Wake up. All right. Thank you. How's everyone doing? Ready for bed? Almost fell asleep. I tell you, it's good for sleep. It's good for sleep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, not very comfortable chair, perhaps. So I have some resources here in case you are interested in seeking confidential psych services. Again, this will be available, and I think will it be uploaded or shared somehow?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. So if you're interested, let us know. And if you have private insurance, you can go through your insurance. These are the references. Any final thoughts or questions? Yes, back there. To get the information that I shared, like the slides, I think you would need to talk to Robert about that. What's the option?
Yeah, you can give me your contact information, and I can.
Like an email?
Yeah.
You need an email?
And then I'll email it to you.
Good. Yeah. Let us know. Yeah. There's a sheet over there. You can put your contact information, and we can send a mass email. Yeah. Come over there. Good. Any other final thoughts? Yes.
Because I think a lot of people signed up to email.
Oh, okay.
But for me personally, I mean, this has really been needed because my new normal is very frustrating compared to what my old normal was. My capacity for what I can do is so much radically different.
Yeah, that new normal. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and I realize I can change it, but then I'm still trying to find if there's other medical things, because I know there are ways to try to get certain things back. But, you know, trying to just focus on the now, not what is, you know, like the not multitasking, all the other things. As someone who's joking that you're not all those depression things, I could click off every single one of those categories.
Yeah, it's different. People have different experiences. Yeah, some people really feel like it fits for them, all these like symptoms or challenges. Other people may find that they have new hope in life after having experienced such challenges.
Well, I can have both. I mean, yeah, I know, but that's kind of like a Hallmark card for some.
Right. But right, I think it's that new normal concept, right? That you are a different person doesn't necessarily mean you're better off or worse off as a person. It just means you have different challenges. Maybe you have more empathy. Yeah. Yeah. So you might have become more empathic towards people after having experienced some challenges. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, whenever I'm anxious, I just think of a quote. Quote comes to mind is, yesterday was a past, tomorrow's a future, today's the present. Enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. You want to enjoy the present, right? Today is that's why it's a gift. That's why it's called present. Exactly. Exactly. Absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. It's been nice talking with you.
Thank you.
All right.